A Rabbinic Anthology selected by C.G. Montefiore and H.Loewe. At the end of Herbert Lowe's introduction, I have appended the portion that talks about the abbreviations. 1083. R. Simeon said, "Theft from an idolater is no less theft than theft from an Israelite." Sifra 110b. Nowadays, it's usually the same thing. 1084. T. Bab Q. X. 15. Z. Page 368, line 1. He who steals from a non-Jew is bound to make restitution to the non-Jew. It is worse to steal from a non-Jew than to steal from an Israelite because of the profanation of the name. T. Bab Q. X15 Z. Page 368, line 1. Well, it hurts the reputation of the community more, and people can end up reacting against the innocent for what the guilty have done. 1085. T. Bab Q. X14 Z. Page 367. Finish. RT. Page 371. Initial. He who robs the public, the many, must restore to the many. Worse is stealing from the many than stealing from an individual, for he who steals from an individual can appease him and return the theft, the former cannot. T. Bab Q. X14 Z. Page 367. Finished. RT. Page 371. Initial. 1086. Bearer 28a. R. Gamaliel II was wont to say, "No pupil whose within is not the same as his without may enter the house of study." Bear 28a. 1087. Ruth R. 76 on 318, folio 12a. R. Huna, in the name of Samuel, the Isaac said, "The yea of the righteous is yea, and their nay is nay." Ruth R. 76 on 318, folio 12a. 1088. Bab M42, Bab M49a. He who punished the generations of the flood and the Tower of Babel will also punish him who does not keep his word. Let your yea and nay be both righteous. Do not speak with your mouth what you do not mean in your heart. Bab M42, Bab M49a. 1089. Ab RN, verse 1, XXX 45b. Now I say the X's because I don't know if there's a separate introduction. That's why you have R. Simeon said, "The punishment of the liar is that he is not believed even when he speaks the truth." ABRN, verse 130, 45b. And that goes for the lies against celebrities and politicians and that sort of stuff. I mean, those people do enough bad things on their own. You don't need to make up things. 1090 and 97a. Rambha said, "I used once to say that there was no such thing as truth in the world, Russia, that there was no man who spoke the truth in all circumstances, till I was told the following about one of the disciples by the name R. Thabuth, or R. Thabiome, who would never break his word, even if one offered him all the fullness of the world. Once he came to a place called Kushta, truth. The inhabitants of this place never broke their word, and none of them ever died prematurely. The disciple married a wife there, who bore him 2 sons. Once his wife was sitting combing her hair when a neighbor came and knocked at the door. The husband thought it unseemly to receive her while his wife was so engaged. So he told her that his wife was not at home. Then his 2 sons died. Then the townsfolk came to him and asked what these premature deaths, implied, i.e., what lie he had told. He related what had happened, and they said, "We entreat you to leave our place and not to tempt death to come here." Sin 97a. And we remember, if it's a good reason, people shouldn't be so shy that they're lying about, hey, my spouse should really be here. If I'm talking to you without, I shouldn't be talking to you without witnesses. So my, 1091, T.J. Bear 1, Section 8, Folio 3C, line 24. Our levy said, God says, if you bear false witness against your neighbor, I regard it as if you had declared that I had not created the world. T.J. Bear 1, Section 8, Folio 3C, line 24, 1092, Pass R, 108 AB. The 10 Commandments correspond to the 10 sayings with which God created the world. So, thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor corresponds to, let us make man in our image. For God said, behold, I have created thy fellow for thee in my image, so that thou hast become a fellow to me, and like unto my image. Therefore, do not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Pass R, 108 AB. Few sins are greater than perjury, and even a false oath, which is supposed to be true, must be a danger to him who uses it. Better not to swear at all. 1395. 1093. Shabbos 38b finished, 38a, T. Sot 72, Z page 306, line 12. The rabbis taught that the oath in a court of law can be spoken in any language. They say to the man who is about to take the oath, know that the whole world trembled when God declared, thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. Remember, Lord is a stand-in for goddess of verb and noun. With regard to all the other sins mentioned in the law, it says, God will forgive. But here it says, God will not forgive. For all the other sins, the sinner alone is punished. For the false oath, both he and his family. For it says, suffer not thy mouth to cause thy flesh to sin. Ecclesiastes 5:6. And by flesh is meant his relatives, as it is said, hide not thyself from thine own flesh. Isaiah 58:7. For all other sins, the sinner only is punished. For the false oath, he and all the world, as it says, there is naught but swearing and breaking faith. Hosea 4:2. Shabbos 38b, finished to 39a, T. Sot 7:2, Z page 306, line 12. And it happens to be Shavuot. Shavuot, yeah, that's the name of the holiday when I'm recording this. Again, one must be aware of taking these statements like others which are here omitted too literally. They are homiletic exaggerations and ingenious misinterpretations of biblical text in order to show up and emphasize the terrible nature of the sin of perjury. Well, hide not yourself from your own flesh. I don't know the context, but that's probably telling the people, knock it off with this silly hiding behind covers and never seeing your spouse, never letting your spouse see, okay, yeah, you've consummated your marriage and all that stuff, but, nothing wrong with seeing each other naked if you're spouses. It's the other people that you're supposed to turn from, right? And the first one, again, it's not that the family's punished. It doesn't say that. It says that, if you say something, it can make the rest of you sin, not just your mouth. 1094, TJ Shabbos 6, 6, 37a, finish line 69 to 37b, initial, line 69, 37b, initial, okay, 37a, finish line 69 to 30, start of 37b. Pass R, 114a. Come and see what the fire does not burn, the false oath destroys. Zechariah 5:4. Or Jonah said, only the oath which a man knows to be false before he swears. Or Joseph said, even the false oath which a man swears by error. R. Haggai taught, according to R. Joseph, and he told the following story. A woman went to her neighbor's house to roll the dough. She had fastened 2 denarii in the seam of her bonnet. They fell down and were rolled into the dough. When she returned, she looked for the denarii and could not find them. She went back and said to her neighbor, give me the 2 denarii which fell down in your house. The neighbor said, I know nothing of them. May I bury my son if I know about them? She buried her son. When they returned from the burial, she heard a voice saying, had she not known about the denarii, she would not have buried her son. She said, may I bury my other son if I know about them? And she buried him, and they came to comfort her. At the meal, a loaf was cut, and the 2 denarii were found in it. So they said, be you guilty or innocent? Do not swear. T.J. Shipot, 6, section 6, 39a, finish, line 69 to 37b, initial, pass R, 114a. 1095, pass R, 112b, finished 113a, RT, page 48. R. Simeon quoted the 2 prohibitions against false swearing, Exodus 27 and Leviticus 19:12. Hence he said that the 3rd commandment referred to an oath which is true but vain. R. Samuel B. Nachmana said, 24 cities were destroyed in the south on account of true oaths which were vain or needless. Hezekiah said, even if a man swears, literally says, about an olive tree that it is an olive, and about a fig tree that it is a fig, this is a vain oath. R. Haggai said, if a man walks in the street and sees the rain falling, and then it says in the Greek tongue, by God it has rained much, Kuri, Palu, Ebrexen, or is it Ebrechen? This is a vain oath. We don't have Greek characters here, so I can't verify. Possibly the implication is that vain swearing is not limited to Hebrew. R. Simeon said, we do not administer an oath to one who runs after it. It once happened that the man entrusted 100 denarii to Bartholomew. When he claimed them, Bartholomew said, I have given them back into your hand. The man said, come, and I will make you swear that you have done so. Bartholomew took a reed and hollowed it out. He put the denarii inside the reed and began to lean upon it. When he came into the synagogue, Bartholomew said to the man, take this stick into your hand while I swear. Bartholomew then swore, by the Lord of this goodly house, I swear that which has been entrusted into my hand, I have given back into your hand. The other man, finding the stick rather heavy in his hand, dropped it, and the denarii fell out. He began to pick them up. Bartholomew said to the man, pick them up, pick them up. It is your own that you pick up. Pass R, 112b, finished 113a, CRT, page 48. This H.L.'s note, the story of the money in the reed is widely known. For parallels, see Friedman's note. It has possibly come from farther east and may belong to some cycle like Ahikar, Barlam, and Jehoshaphat, which in part can be traced to Buddhist Jatakas. At least the same principle is followed in relating the tales. The name Bartholomew is uncommon. By some it was understood to be that of a demon, but Bar Talmion may not be the same as Bar Talmai. The story spread westwards. It occurs in Don Quixote, Part 2, Chapter 45, and an editor notes that the earlier versions are to be found in the following: Life of San Nicholas of Bari in The Golden Legend by J. D. Voragin, El Libro de lo Exemplo by Clement Sanchez de Versiel, number 165, H.L.'s note, 1096, Tunch B. Mathot 79a. God said to Israel, "Be careful what you vow, and do not become addicted to making vows, for whoever is so addicted will in the end sin by breaking his oath, and he who breaks his oath denies me without hope of pardon." Exodus 27. Tunch B. Mathot 79a, 1097, Tunch B. Wayikra 5a finish. It says in Deuteronomy 10:20, "It is the Lord thy God," remember the Lord is a stand-in for increasing existence, "that thou shalt fear, and him shalt thou serve, and to him shalt thou cleave." And then the verse continues, "And by his name shalt thou swear." You may swear only if you are God-fearing, even as Abraham, who was so called in Genesis 22:12, or Joseph, Genesis 42:18, or Job 1:2. Tunch B. Wayikra 5a finish. 1098, Sifra, Deuteronomy Ha-Azanu, section 330, folio 139b. When God created the heavens, he created them only by a word. What caused God to swear? As in Deuteronomy 32:40, "I lift up my hand to heaven," i.e. I swear. They who were lacking in faith caused him to swear. Sifra Deuteronomy Ha-Azanu, section 330, folio 139b. There's all these references in the Quran that talk about by this and by that and by that. Well, you can also say, when it comes to deity, that that is, means by which we're being called to understand. But as far as the swearing, by this power of mine, by that power of mine, why don't you accept the others, right? There's a certain robbery or deception of the mind, as it is called, which is also strongly condemned. 1099. T Bab Q, it's a dot below the K, so I'm just going to call it Q. 78Z, page 358, line 19, C, selection 1263. There are 7 sorts of thieves, and the first of them all is he who steals the mind of, i.e. deceives, his fellow men. For example, he who urges his neighbor to be his guest, when in his heart he does not mean to invite him. He who presses gifts upon his neighbor, when he knows that his neighbor will not accept them. T. Bab Q 78 C, page 358, line 19, C 1263. Yeah, some people have tried that on me. Like, oh, here's a, it's like, I don't believe that's right. Why are you, 1100 T Bab B 614 Z 406, line 13, 1263. A man must not press his neighbor to eat with him when he knows that his neighbor will not accept the invitation. A man must not open a cask of wine which has already been sold in order to give a friend a drink. That's the seller, right? TBAB B614 C 406, line 13, 1263 of our selections are, listen to these programs in order. And I'm not sure how long some of the narrations are, so I'm not sure how many programs it will be. 1001, Chol 94a, Samuel said, one must not steal the mind of one's fellow men, not even of a Gentile. Chol 94a. Well, we're just talking about alcohol, so, definitely don't want to mess up the consciousness of another by even encouraging that, right? 1102, T Meg 15Z, page 222, line 4, Arm Air said, one must not utilize for buying vessels a loan obtained for the purpose of buying fruit, or vice versa, because the borrower thereby steals the mind of the lender. T Meg 15Z, page 222, line 4. Okay, I don't quite understand the phrase, but that's our context of that. 1103, Chol 94a, a man must not send his fellow a cask of wine with oil swimming on the top. Once a man did so, and the receiver invited guests, and when they had come, it was found that the cask contained wine, and the man hanged himself. Chol 94a, well, it says it was a cask of wine, so but maybe he saw the oil on top and thought it was an oil bottle. But still, regardless of the enemy's H.L.'s note, wine was relatively cheap. Oil was dear. In this case, the sender pretended to have sent his friend a valuable present. The receiver invited his friends to share it, but when the trick was discovered, killed himself out of shame at having to disappoint them. H.L.'s note. Okay. Still, don't be such a sociopath that you're at risk for that, right? 1104, Bab M58b, Mishnah 410, Sifra 107d. As there is a wrongdoing or overreaching in buying or selling, so there is wronging in words. One must not ask the price of anything if one has no intention of buying it. One must not say to a man who has repented and changed his way of life, remember your former deeds. If a man is a descendant of proselytes, one must not say to him, remember the deeds of your ancestors, for it says, a proselyte you shall not vex or oppress. So the Mishnah, the Gemara, enlarges, if a proselyte wants to study the law, one must not say, what? A mouth which ate forbidden food and creeping abominations wants to learn the law, which was spoken by the mouth of God? If sufferings and sickness befall anyone, or if his children die, one must not say to him, as Job's friend said to Job, who ever perished being innocent? Is not thy piety thy confidence? If donkey drivers seek provender, and you have none, you must not say, go to such a one, he sells provender, when you know that he never does so. Or Judah says one must not look at goods when one has no money to buy them with. All such things are matters entrusted to the heart, and of the things entrusted to the heart, it says, you shall fear the Lord your God. Remember, the Lord is stand-in for established. R. Johanan said, the wrong in words is a heavier sin than the wrong in money, for it is only in regard to the wrong in words that says, you shall fear the Lord your God. R. Elazar said, it is worse, because it relates to the personality, and the other only to a man's money. R. Samuel B. Nachmana said, it is worse because the one can be paid back and the other cannot. Note 86, Bab M 58b, Mishnah 410, Sifra 107d. 1105, Bab M 59a, 814. R. Elazar said, since the day the temple was destroyed, the gates of prayer have been shut. Lamentations 3:8. But the gates of tears are never shut. Psalm 39:12. R. Chista said, The gate of heaven may be shut to all prayers, but never to the prayer of him who has been wounded by the words of his fellow. R. Elazar said, all sins are punished by an angel, except the sin of wounding. R. Abahu said, the heavenly curtain is drawn back before three things: wounding, robbery, and idolatry. Bab M59A. See selection 814, or just listen to these programs in order. The gate means the heavenly gate. God sees to the punishment of wounding himself. He regards it as so very serious. The punishment of other sins he delegates to the angels. 1006, Tanch B, Way Era 53A, 569, 1177, 1275. What is meant by ona'ah? The root of this word is used in Leviticus 19:33. If a stranger sojourn with you, do not vex him. Lo tonu otu. Lo tonu oto. What do vexation, annoyance, and kindness comprise? This, taught the rabbis, is ona'ah. If a man asks a tradesman the price of an article when he has no intention of buying it, or if a man say to a penitent, think of your past deeds, or to the son of a proselyte, remember your parents' deeds, the swine's flesh is still between their teeth. God says, it is enough for thee to make thyself, as it were, like to me, for when I created my world, I strove not to hurt a single one of my creatures, and I did not publish to any human being the name of the tree of which Adam ate, so that even the tree should not be put to shame. Tanch B, Way Era 53A, see selection 569, 1177, 1275, 1107, Sifra 88D. The law, thou shalt not set a stumbling block before the blind, is extended to mean you must not hide part of your intention in giving advice to a man. You must not say, sell your field and buy a donkey, when you are really intending to circumvent him and get his field, i.e., by buying his field from him. Perhaps you will reply, I gave him good advice, i.e., it was really to his interest to sell his field and get the donkey. No, even so, you must not act thus. This is a matter delivered to the heart. Cipher 88D. There is no actual law against such action, but good feeling and the higher justice declare that it must not be done. It may therefore be readily imagined that hypocrisy is one of the sins most strongly condemned. 1108, South 41b, see selection 1385. R. Elazar said, a man in whom is hypocrisy brings wrath upon the world, and his prayer is not heard. He also said, him in whom is hypocrisy, the children in their mother's womb curse. He also said, the hypocrites fall into Gehenna. RT, page 118, South 41b, 1385. Now, initially, this was just a place south of Jerusalem, right? And it became a metaphor for hell, or a metanomial, or, whatever form of figure of speech you're talking about. The word chanif means both a flatterer and a hypocrite. Okay. Well, just like the Arabic word for hypocrite, munafiq, means you're working both sides, right? 1109, Midrash Psalm on 52, heading 142b, section 3. Archia taught, hypocrites may be exposed publicly because of the profanation of the name, as it says in Proverbs 26:26. His wickedness shall be exposed before the congregation. And why does God make known his evil way? in order that if any misfortune befall him because of his iniquities, men should not accuse the justice of God. Therefore God exposes the deeds of him who flatters his neighbor hypocritically. Come and learn from Doeg, who was the president of the Sanhedrin, as it says, Doeg the Edomite, the chief of the herdsmen of Saul, 1 Samuel 21:7. Because of his slander, even though he was learned in the law, the scripture makes it publicly known that he was a slanderer, in order to specify to men his deeds, so that, when punishment befell him, they should not accuse the divine justice. Midrash Psalm on 52, heading 142b, section 3. 1110, Ecclesiastes R4, section 1 on 4:1, 12b. They had no comforter. Ecclesiastes 4:1. R. Benjamin interpreted the verse to refer to the hypocrites in regard to the law. People suppose that they can read the scriptures in the Mishnah, but they cannot. They wrap their prayer shawls around them, they put their phylacteries on their heads, and they oppress the poor. Of them it is written, Behold the tears of the oppressed, and they have no comforter. It is mine to punish, says God, as it is said, Cursed be they who do the work of the Lord deceitfully. Jeremiah 48:10. Ecclesiastes R4, section 1 on 4:1, 12b. 1111. R. Gamaliel used to say, Act in secret as you act in public. ABRN, verse 2, 32, 36a initial. 1112, ABRN, verse 2, 23, 24. See selection 1330, or these in order, right? Shammai said, Let thy Torah be something fixed. Abbott 115, and Singer renders the sentence, Fix a period for thy study of the Torah. Do not make the law light for thyself and heavy for others, or light for others but heavy for thyself, but let the light for thee be light for others, and the heavy for thee be heavy for others. As to fixed study, see 928. ABRN, verse 2, 23, 24a, see 1330. 1113, Midrash Psalm on 101:7, 214b, section 3. There are 4 classes of men who do not see the face of the Shekinah: the mockers, the hypocrites, the slanderers, the liars. Midrash Psalm on 101:7, 214b, section 3. A sin about which the rabbis speak with remarkable iteration is slander, a sin which was, perhaps, rather prevalent in some Jewish communities, and was possibly connected with the wickedness of the informers, delators, well, just like they hire, false informers about certain communities, or try to, well, this is rare in this community, I'm going to talk about it somehow as part of the culture or something, right? 1114, Arak 15b. The slanderer is as if he denied God. His sin is so great that it extends even unto heaven. God says of the slanderer, He and I cannot live together in the world. How can a man cure himself from being a slanderer? Let a disciple of the wise study the law. Let an haaretz become humble. Arak 15b. 1115, Midrash Proverbs 4, section 12, folio 28a. A good-for-nothing and wicked man is he that walks with a crooked mouth. Proverbs 6:12. This is the slanderer, for God has likened him to an idolater. Slander is as serious as idolatry. Or Joshua says, slander is as bad as murder. Slander is like unto idolatry and murder and incest. Midrash Proverbs 6:12, folio 28a. 1116, Deuteronomy R. Ketetze 6:14. God says in this world, because there were slanderers amongst you, I have withdrawn my Shekinah from your midst, but in the time to come, when I root out the evil inclination from you, I shall cause my Shekinah to return to you. And because I shall make my Shekinah to dwell among you, you will be worthy to fulfill the law, and you will dwell in peace. Deuteronomy R. Ketetse 6:14. Here there seems to be a sort of double and concurrent action in the Messianic age, because God, by his grace, removes the evil Yetzer, and the Israelites are able to do and to be good. The Shekinah can once more rest and dwell among them, and because the Shekinah once again comes down upon them, therefore they are worthy to be enabled to fulfill the law. 1117, numbers R. Chukat 19:2. Why is the slanderous tongue called Shalesha? Third, because it slays three: him who utters the slander, him who receives it, and him of whom it is uttered. Numbers R. Chukat 19:2. Evil speaking is sometimes worse than evil doing. Well, because words can influence far more than any particular act, right? 1118, Tanch Bereshit, section 8, folio 11b. It was the sin of slander that sealed the fate of our ancestors in the wilderness. Numbers 14:37. 95% of Jews have no Semitic ancestry, so there's that to consider too. Joshua ben Levi said, no man reaches the sin of slander till after he has repudiated God, for when it speaks of the deceitful tongue, Psalm 12, it says that the slanderers declare, who is Lord over us? Hard is slander, for it brought death to Adam. The serpent said to him, God knows that if you eat the fruit, you will become like him, and every craftsman is jealous of his fellow. Adam listened, and death came as a result of slander. Tanch Bereshit, section 8, folio 11b. 1119, TJ Pa'a 1, section 1, folio 16a, line 8. R. Joseph said, in the name of R. Johanan, all other sins which man commits have to do with the earth, but slander relates both to earth and to heaven, as it is said, they set their mouth against the heavens, and their tongue walks through the earth. Psalm 73:9, TJ Pa'a 1, section 1, folio 16a, line 8. 1120, TJ Pa'a 1, section 1, folio 15d, line 60. There are four great sins which correspond to four great virtues, in that man is punished for them in this world, and their capital or stock remains in the form of punishment dealt out to him in the world to come. These four are idolatry, incest, murder, slander, which last is as bad as all the other three put together. TJ Pa'a 1, section 1, folio 15d, line 60, 1121, Tanch B, Metzora 24a. In the world to come, all sinners will be healed, save the serpent, because it uttered slander. Therefore it says, cursed art thou above all creatures. Genesis 3:14. They will all be healed except the serpent, whose food is dust, both in this world and in the next. Isaiah 65:25, Tanch B, Metzora 24a. Well, as far as 1120, a lie can, be related to the other, right? Or can be how the false worship, the wrongful sex, the wrongful violence, lies can be how that comes about. 1122, Midrash Psalm on 39, 128b, section 4. It says, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not with my tongue. I will keep my mouth with a muzzle. Psalm 39:1. Can there be a muzzle for the mouth? But the meaning is, I will keep silence so that I may not busy myself with empty matters, but only with the words of the Torah, as it says, a tree of life is healing for the tongue, Proverbs 15:4. The tree is the Torah. Hence you may learn that God gave the law to the Israelites only that they should not busy themselves with vain things and with slander, as it says, thou shalt talk of them. Deuteronomy 6:7, that is, of the law, and not of vain things or slander. So David said, who desires to acquire by the life of the world to come? They said to him, man cannot buy it. He replied, but it is cheap, for it is written, who is man that desires life? Psalm 34:12, it depends upon man's will and not his riches. They said, who can acquire life? He replied, keep thy tongue from evil, and evil means slander. Psalm 34:12, 34:13, as it says, let his lying lips be put to silence. Psalm 31:18. Midrash Psalm on 39:1, 128b, section 4. There is a less serious form of slander, which is called dust of slander, which we may perhaps call uncharitable comment on our neighbors, a thing that even good men find it very hard to avoid. More 2, 150, 1123, Bab B, 164, finish. R. Amram said, in the name of Rab, from 3 sins a man cannot escape every day. Wicked, i.e. lustful, thoughts, calculation on or inattentiveness during prayer, and slander. Surely not slander. Well, dust of slander. R. Judah said, in the name of Rab, in most men, people, is a little tendency to robbery, in a few men to unchastity, and in all to slander. Surely not to slander. Well, to dust of slander. Bab B, 164b, and we start a note by H.L. The word bak, literally dust, is sometimes used in a transferred sense, meaning something akin to or connected with or a shade of something else, or tantamount to it. Thus, dust of slander equals gossip. Calculation on or inattentiveness in prayer. These are alternative renderings of one phrase, which, owing to its ambiguity, has attracted the attention of commentators. This phrase is iyun tefillah. The word iyun, from the same root as ayin, eye, really suggests attention to rather than inattention. The root meaning, i.e. to look at, is essentially neutral in significance, although in the Bible already it acquires special connotations. For example, for Samuel 18:9, Saul was eyeing David, and synonyms in the sense of looking askance at occur in Psalm 92:11, 118:7, and on the Moabite stone, line 7. Moabite stones, that one where silly people are like, oh, it proves this religion wrong, and it's like, how, right? In post-classical Hebrew, it means to consider, sometimes to regard with close attention. As a noun, our phrase occurs also in Bear 55a top, where Cohen renders it by calculating in prayer. The preceding sentence in Bara code is, whoever prolongs his prayer and calculates on it, me'ayen, will in the end come to heart grief. And this phrase is explained by Rashi as, whosoever says in his heart, i.e. thinks, that his request will be fulfilled because he has prayed sincerely. Rashi goes on to say that grief of heart means that his request will not be fulfilled. In Baba Batra Rasha repeats this explanation, but rather elaborates it, and he prefaces it with the words, "Some commentators think that," but the Tosafist in Baba Bathra, commenting on Rashi, points out that Ayun Tefillah is also used in a good sense, i.e. devotion and prayer, Sava 127a. The passage has several parallels, of which the best known is the beginning of Pe'ah, cited in the prayer book 5. Here, Abraham's has, as usual, an excellent note. This, as well as his article in JQROS 276, should be studied. The Tosafist suggests that a man may be praying while thoughts of sin, her avera, are in his heart. It would seem that there is a little support for the rendering in attention and prayer given by Levi Yun, save in so far as concentration on the material, which is in attention to the real import of the words uttered in prayer. The rendering calculation is to be preferred. HL 1124, TAB ZAR 1, 10-14, see page 461, line 11. There are 4 dusts: the dust of usury, the dust of the 7th year, i.e. any agricultural occupation not directly related to those forbidden in the Sabbath year, the dust of idolatry, the dust of slander. A man should not do business with money borrowed from his neighbor, nor with the 7th year produce, because of the dust of usury, and the dust of the 7th year, because of the dust of idolatry. He should avoid business with his neighbor on a heathen. Well, there are no heathen pagan religions, but probably the term means somebody who is a polytheist festival, like the Christian, like Christmas, Easter, and Halloween are the big Christian festivals. And because of the dust of slander, a man should not gossip about his neighbor, even gossip to his neighbor's credit, or possibly with his neighbor's approval. TB ZAR 1, 10-14, see page 461, line 11. And of course not. The saint days are, various neo-pagan things, right? Take care even about overpraising a man, for that may lead others to adverse criticism. 1125, Mab B, 164b, finish more 250, Proverbs 27:14. Or Demas said, "Let not a man dilate in praise of his neighbor, lest from his praise there is a passing to his blame." Bab B, 164b, finish more 250, Proverbs 27:14. Allied to slander is scoffing and mockery. 1126, Abzar 18b. He who mocks sacred things, the commandments, etc., will end in hell. Abzar 18b. 1127. Scoffing is serious, for its beginning is sufferings, and its end is destruction. T.J. Bearer, Section 8, Folio 5C, line 71. One must be very careful not to hurt one's neighbor's feelings. 1128, Bab M 59b, finish. As the folks say, if there is a case of hanging in a family, say not to one of them, "Hang this fish up for me." Bab M 59b, finish. To put your neighbor to shame is a cardinal sin according to Rabbinic ethics. 1129, Soth 32b. Why did they ordain that some prayer should be recited in a low voice, so as not to put a sinner to shame in public? Soth 32b. For this reason, the penultimate sentence of grace after meals in prayer book, page 285, Psalm 37:25, is said silently by Ashkenazic Jews, so as not to put to shame a poor guest who may perchance be present. But Leviticus R. Betchukotai 35, Section 2, 1130, South 10b, R. Simeon B. Yochai said, "It were better for a man to fall into a burning oven than to put his neighbor to shame in public." The burning oven or fiery furnace metaphor is not infrequent. See 769 and 1161, South 10b. 1131, Bab M. 58b. Someone taught before R. Nachman B. Isaac, if a man puts his neighbor to shame in public, it is if he shed blood. R. Nachman said to him, "Well, have you spoken? For we see how the red disappears and the pallor comes." Bab M. 58b. 1132, Ta'an 48, see page LXXIII. R. Simeon B. Gamaliel said, "There were no happier days for Israel than the 15th of Ab and the Day of Atonement, for on them the sons, some texts have the daughters, of Jerusalem used to go forth in white garments to dance in the vineyards, and these garments were borrowed so that none who did not possess them should be put to shame." Words left out. The daughters of Jerusalem, too, used to go out on these days and dance in the vineyards, saying, "Young man, lift up thine eyes, and consider whom thou wilt select for thyself as a wife. Do not fix thine eyes upon beauty, but consider the family." And the young man replied, Canticles 3:2, "Go forth, O ye daughters of Zion, and gaze upon King Solomon, even upon the crown wherewith his mother has crowned him in the day of his espousals, and in the day of the gladness of his heart." Ta'an 4:8, CP page LXXIII. The quotation in the present connection should end with the words "put to shame," but the sentences which follow seem worth inclusion. And H.L.'s note. The commentators on this well-known and interesting passage are concerned mainly with the 15th of Ab. Why was it a joyous day? Clearly the origin was forgotten. In the Gemara, great uncertainty prevails, and different reasons are offered. Nearly all these reasons are connected with the abrogation of certain bans, for example, against the intermarriage of the tribes, Numbers 36, 6 and 7, against giving wives to the Benjamites, Jude 21:2, against the entry, Judges 21:2, against the entry into the promised land, for on this day the last of the generation doomed to wander died, Deuteronomy 2:16, 17, against Israelite pilgrimages to Jerusalem, 2 Kings 17:2, against the burial of the Bethar martyrs in the Bar Kokhba War, R. Well, considering, was it really martyrs or was it, right? R. It was the day on which they ceased cutting wood for the altar. Now, any one of these reasons might suffice. Cumulatively, they cancel each other. The last are even inherently impossible. How could they be responsible for a holiday in ancient Israel? The suggestion of Bethar comes from R. Matna, who lived in Babylonia about 320 of the Common Era. Can he really have thought that an event which happened in 135, 135 was the establishment of Palestine, would explain a practice of ancient Israel? Well, some people would have seen it as confirming, right? Again, the saying in the Mishnah, is recorded by Simeon B. Gamaliel II, who was a youth in Bethar when the Bar Kokhba War broke out, and who escaped from the massacre. They were trying to kill all the non-Jews. And then the Romans were like, no, this is, trying to kill everybody who's not a Jew who comes to the area. That's not acceptable. So they opened it up for trade and stuff. Is it likely that he, of all people, would have referred so vaguely to an event which must have had poignant memories for him? Moreover, the phrase he uses, there used not to be such joyous days in Israel, surely points to a long distant past. It is clear that we have here traditions of an ancient holiday no longer observed and but dimly recorded. Both Simeon and the Amoraim are giving us antiquarian information, not a description of current usage. Still more is this evident in the case of the Day of Atonement. Can we reconcile the bank holiday with the proprietary character of the day? When would the people have time to dance in the vineyards? The Mishnah tells us that a worshiper who saw the burnings of the bullock and the he-goat could not see the high priest read the lesson, because the acts were performed at the same time, and the distance between the places where they were performed was great. Yoma 7:2. Moreover, there was so much to witness in the temple and in the environs, for example, the high priest's procession, the sending away the scapegoat, that there would be no time for the dancing in the vineyards. Even if such a celebration were in keeping with the character of the day, there is no trace of it in the Yoma program of the ritual. One cannot escape the conclusion that we have here a reminiscence of the ancient celebration of the day as it was kept before the time of Ezekiel. There were elements in it that the Pharisees did not like, because maybe they had inklings that it wasn't really connected to the prophetic practice. The controversy over the kindling of the incense is a striking example of their efforts to spiritualize the atonement rites. Had the day been entirely a post-exilic institution, it is doubtful whether the scapegoat would have been introduced. The ritual of the goat was too ancient to be removed. Because the Azazel is Moloch, Shaitan, Gnog, whatever you want to call the devil, right? Ahriman and Gromenu. But the Pharisees did their best to elevate it to a symbol. No doubt the dancing in the vineyards is another relic of a joyous national festival which was celebrated during the monarchy, and which was later transformed to a great day of solemn expiation and national reconciliation with God. See note 60, and that's the end of H.Loewe's note. We find in Leviticus 6:25, MT 6:18, the words 1133 TJ South 8, section 9, follow 23a, line 31. In the place where the burnt offering is killed, shall also the sin offering be killed. Our Levi said in the name of our Simeon B. Lachish, this was ordained so as not to expose the sinners, to shame. TJ South 8, section 9, follow 23a, line 31. People might think that they were bringing not a sin offering, but a burnt offering. Sensitive consideration for the feeling of others is indeed very characteristic of the rabbis. 1134 TJ Pa'ah 8, section 9, follow 21b, line 51. R. Eliezer B. Jacob invited a blind man to dinner, and he placed him above himself at the table, so that they said, this must be a great man, or R. Eliezer would not have placed him above himself at the table. They showed him, therefore, much distinction. To what do I owe this? The blind man asked them. They replied, because our Eliezer placed you above himself at the table. Then the blind man prayed for him thus, thou hast shown loving kindness to him who is seen but cannot see. May he who sees but cannot be seen receive thy graciousness, and show loving kindness to thee. TJ Pa'a 8, section 9, folio 21b, line 51. 1135, TJ Pa'a 8, section 9, folio 21b, line 45. R. Hoshea employed a blind man as a teacher for his son, and he used to dine with R. Hoshea. One day R. Hoshea had guests, and he did not invite the blind man to eat with him. In the evening he went to him and said, "Let not my master be annoyed with me. I had guests, and I did not want you to be held in low esteem and not receive due honor. Hence it was that I did not have you to eat with me today." The blind man said, "You have appeased him who is seen and sees not. May he who sees and is unseen receive your appeasement." TJ Pa'a 8, section 9, folio 21b, line 45.